President Donald Trump seems to be singling out and targeting India. He's now signed the latest executive order imposing 25% additional tariffs. This is separate from the 25% tariffs which he announced previously, and what he now calls as a penalty for continuing to buy Russian oil. What this basically means is that India now faces one of the highest tariffs as far as that is effect, but the additional 25% announced will now come into effect from the 27th of August. Here is where India stands on the tariff table, and it is now sharing the top spot with Brazil. Let's put that out, especially when it comes to the figures is now concerned percentage-wise. So it was previously 25% that was announced. There was an unspecified penalty as well that was announced by the United States. Donald Trump has said that there was a massive trade deficit with India as it also continued with its business of purchase of oil and energy from Russia. And that was a kind of a way that protest was raised on part of the United States, saying that India was aiding a war machine like Russia. Now, last evening, in fact, it was already night there in the United States, and we're looking at this order suddenly that came out of nowhere, 25% additional tariffs that has now been imposed on India. And this comes on the table, the top of the table, with India and Brazil both having 50% of the tariff that is now going to be imposed on part of United States. 30% followed by South Africa, Vietnam 20, Indonesia 19, Japan, South Korea at 15%, UK at 10%, multiple countries who are already negotiating a trade deal with the United States of America as far as when it comes to lowering of the tariffs. But Donald Trump, as far as when it comes to India is concerned, has already warned that there would be retaliatory reciprocal tariffs if India decides to hit back. Now, on being asked in the latest statement, Indian officials have said that there are other countries that are buying. Indian officials have said that there are other countries that are buying, purchasing Russian oil, like China, for instance. Then why only is India being targeted? Why is there a 90-day pause that has been given for Beijing? Why is there a window that has now been kept open for its adversaries like China? Why are you singling out India for these additional sanctions? The US president, however, says that it has been only 8 hours. So let's see what happens. You're going to see a lot more. You're going to see so much secondary sanctions.
Let me go, please.
Indian officials have said that there are other countries that are buying Russian oil.
It's okay.
Like China, for instance, buying more.
Yeah.
Why are you singling India out for these additional sanctions?
It's only been 8 hours, so let's see what happens over the next.
Sanctions.
You're going to see a lot more.
So this is a taste of.
You're going to see a lot more. You're going to see so much secondary sanctions. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. So let me introduce Tushar Gupta joining us here on the broadcast. We also have Ajay Dua, the former Secretary Ministry of Commerce, joining us here on the broadcast. Good morning to you, gentlemen. My colleague Srinjoy is also connected with us. Mr. Dua, as far as 50% at par with Brazil, because these are multiple countries who are also part of the BRICS platform, and Donald Trump here seems to be making his point clear that he seems to be targeting India in particular. What changed, and should India continue to push for a trade deal with the US?
Samantha, for having me.
Yes, sir.
I think President Trump continues. President Trump continues to be upset with some recent. And this is a reflection of that. First, the 25% tariff, and then the additional 25% tariff. With continuing to buy oil from Russia, that he might review it in 21 days if India were to stop buying the large amount of 35% of its requirement, almost 2 million barrels a day. He would stop it. The question is what India has raised yesterday, and it's been all along said that is tariff or are tariffs an economic instrument for him to fill up his deficit, what he's been worried about all this while, one could understand. Or is it a political instrument? Now it's being used. The additional 25% which he has imposed and to come into effect, as you mentioned, on the 27th of August,
yes.
It is merely and a straightforward political instrument. Political against Russia, saying if you do not stop your fight or your war in Ukraine, I would do this, I would do that.
But is this the changing political scenario as far as the global access situation is concerned? Because when the imposition, just before that, we are looking at the US envoy also meeting Vladimir Putin, India's NSA Ajit Doval, who's also there in Moscow. Lots more has been happening, and Donald Trump seems not to be putting out as far as secondary sanctions on India is also concerned. So lots more happening. What has exactly irked him? What has exactly offended him? We'll talk about that as well in detail.